Part 3 is a question and answer session, but more of a discussion based on the topic of Part 2. Candidates have to be able to cope with questions about the environment, educational system, and, in general, issues facing either their country or the world.
So it's more abstract?
Yes, and it helps to know what is going on in the world.
What if a candidate doesn't understand a question?
Well, just like in Part 2, he or she should request clarification. Let's see how Boya does this.
Now people want to have more higher educations because they want to get a good job, so they don't have much more time for leisure.
Okay. What effects on society do you think any changes in the ages at which people retire might have?
Sorry.
There's talk about changing the law about retirement age,
Yeah.
making it possible for people to retire later.
Okay.
What effects will this have on society?
Oh, so you mean is the retired age for people in this society?
Yeah.
What I know in China is people probably at age 50, they probably will retire.
And what will candidates be asked to do?
To express an opinion, appropriately introduced by "I think" or "in my opinion," etc., and backed up by evidence. Let's see what Danilo uses.
Do you think that people generally have enough leisure time?
No, I personally think that nowadays people don't have a lot of free time, and
He says, "I prefer to think." Now, Boya.
Talking about the opposite of leisure, that is work, do you think that employers should encourage employees to work overtime or discourage them from doing so?
I suppose not to do that, because it's better to encourage them, to make them, let them know what they want to do, and they can do it by themselves to work harder and to make the work better. Yeah.
She uses "I suppose," but we are looking for a wide range of expressions such as "I really believe" or "what I think is." Another thing a candidate may have to do is evaluate, to make a comment or decision on how valuable something is, how important or useful.
So do you think that the change has been for the better or for the worse?
I think for worse, because of relationships and anyway, a few people had contact with nature, and they just spend the time with new technology, like I said, the computers and television.
So Daniel doesn't think much of the way we enjoy ourselves these days. Evaluation, I suppose, is another way of expressing an opinion. Is there any other way that they will have to use language?
They might have to compare and contrast. Danilo's response is rather good on this.
How do you think the ways in which people spend their leisure time have changed since 100 years ago?
I think it's changed a lot. Maybe 100 years ago, people didn't used to have weekends off or anyway days off, so they didn't have much free time to spend in doing some leisure activities. Whereas now life is much easier. I mean, people have 2 days or at least 1 day off, so they can spend a lot of time doing relaxing activities, such as going to cinema, having a walk from time to time, or go shopping around when they have a chance.
He uses whereas to express contrast. Daniel does answer this question, but his response is very disjointed and it's not easy to see the grammatical structure.
What's the difference? It depends because of technology was developing, and so maybe 100 years ago, without television and without DVD, without CD, without computers, they spend a lot of time with their family, and now.
Another thing a candidate may be called on to do is to hypothesize.
Hypothesize?
Yes, to imagine a situation which doesn't exist in reality, to imagine what would happen if things were different from what they are. Let's watch an example.
Penelope, how do you think people would react if there was no TV?
Well, I think they would be quite shocked because, well, I never had a life without TV, so I would be quite surprised, and it would be shocking news. What would be a problem would be that we're used to getting news and stuff really quickly, and we wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, you wouldn't get to know that the TV was out before the newspaper came out the day after, and that would be a bit late because today the society is moving quite quickly, so that would not be good. Also, well, if it happened like for a long period of time, you would probably go back in time and start playing games again with your families and go out and see the blue sky and take some fresh air, and we would probably go back to what we used to do, going to a theatre and playing football with friends, even though we're grown up and don't usually do that anymore. But I think people would panic a bit, and also a lot of people would lose their work. So so many people would be out in the dole. That's not good.
Yes, she used would consistently, didn't she?
In a second conditional construction. Now listen to Daniel.
What do you think would happen if the government banned overtime?
Oh, it's terrible. If they had banned overtime, I think that people would do black business. We call that black business. So I think that employers would use the employee for overtime. So I think that it's useless to ban that.
Now, let's listen to Boya.
What would happen if the government said that people can work as long as they wish?
No, I don't think it's a good thing, because people have rights and they don't want to work all their lifetime. They have time to relax, to leisure, to spend with their children or with their parents. So I think it have retired age for people to retire. Yeah.
She doesn't really answer the question, does she? She thinks I mean people should be forced to work all their lives, whereas I suggested that they should be allowed to. Then there's something else they might have to do, speculate about the future. What form does Danilo use to do this?
I think it might be popular in the future, going to a gym, or anyway doing sports, such as going to, as I said, to a gym or swimming or running.
Okay, so do you think that more and more people will take this up?
Yeah, I think it's already happening now. Many people go to a gym before going to work, maybe in the first morning, about 7 o'clock, or after they worked.
He uses might.
Yes, though that's also the form I use in my question. He might also have used terms like maybe, perhaps, in all probability, what seems likely, is, etc.
And any other language they should concentrate on?
Yes, they need to use signpost words, words which indicate what is ahead or coming, what kind of thing the speaker wishes to say, perhaps reason or result, or an example, or to point out some kind of contrast. Let's listen to Pernille.
So do you think the quality of life these days is worse than it used to be?
Well, the quality of life is definitely better in theory because now we live longer and we're not as sick as they used to be. If you get a disease now, you can be cured.
She uses because. However, this is a very common word, so we're looking for terms like since, as, seeing that, or the reason is. For result, of course, there's so, or so that, or verbs like cause, or lead to. And in this clip, Pernille uses some quite advanced vocabulary.
Of course, entertainment is a very big industry these days. What kind of impact does that have on our lives?
Well, I think all people are, in some way or another, are affected by the entertainment industry.
She uses affected by.
Yes, and she could have also used words like impact or influence. Now, in this clip, Daniel introduces an example.
Let's take the opposite of leisure, that is work. Do you think employers should encourage employees to work overtime or discourage them from doing it?
I think that they could be encourage them, but it depends of the work as well. Because, for example, if I'll do my work or during my normal hours, and I'm not able to do everything, and I will do hard work. So then I have to take overtime as well. So I will expect from my boss that he will encourage me, or maybe he will help me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he uses for example, but we can also use such as or for instance.
Or an example is, let's take as an example, etc.
You also mentioned contrast. Danilo used whereas earlier to express this.
Yes, what does he use here?
Do you think that people generally have enough leisure time?
No, I personally think that nowadays people don't have a lot of free time, and they many people are workaholic and they prefer to spend their time working. But in the other hand, there are other people who would like to have more leisure time, but they can't because they have a lot of fees to pay. So they spend more time working rather than having free time.
On the other hand, except he said in the other hand.
Exactly. Something else, although we haven't got any examples, is to outline your response. For example, there are two things I can say about this.
It might be helpful to watch a whole interview now.
Well, here's Boya. As you watch, think about those general criteria: fluency and coherence, vocabulary, grammatical accuracy and range, and pronunciation. To take the last point, how does she pronounce the word busy, B-U-S-Y, in part 2? Does she make an effective use of stress and intonation? But, above all, is she clear enough? In part 1, are her responses extended enough or too brief? Does she use fillers to give herself time to think?
Yes, and in part 2, does she continue as confidently as she started?
Also, maintaining eye contact is very important. Not staring